It looks like I'm up and live. Well, good morning, everyone. This is Mark Wriggle with John Levinian Success Mastermind. This is January 7th, 7 days into 2021. My first foray this year into a morning general session. And before we get started, I'll just make some acknowledgments here. I see Adrian, Kim, Sonia, Jane and Neil, Elmer's here, Jody, Evelyn, Stuart, Therese, Janet, Carlene, The Torch, Cyril, Linda, Sandy, Toba, and Suzanne. And the hits keep coming. There comes Gail, and who else is coming in? So there'll probably be some others straggling in. There's Julia, Giovanna. So hello to everybody. I'm going to kick this thing off. My topic today is on planning. And this isn't to cut into to Adrian and Ego's Wednesday fests. Today, we're going to talk about the 6 troop leading steps and the 5-paragraph order that we affectionately use in the Marine Corps in our planning process. Because what I wanted to do is a couple things. I want you to see what, maybe what the other side of the fence kind of goes through, but also please, when you're looking at this, capture what looks to be the same. While the nomenclature and the verbiage may seem foreign and different than in some of the acronyms, I'd argue that the planning process, actually there are many there are many ties, many things that while they're called something different, they do the same thing. And I think you're going to see that in this process. So I wanted to share that with you and pull you into that environment, something that you likely have not seen unless maybe you've worked in and around this kind of environment before. So it's going to be foreign to you, and we'll go through it pretty quickly. And if there's anybody here who would like to dig deeper into any aspect of what I talk about today, we can do this maybe we do this next Thursday on the strategic, global, and tactical side of the house, or we find some other time to expand upon that. So, and I see who's else come on here. Nancy, see you. Looks like you've come in. Emma, how you doing? So, everybody, appreciate Susie. Thanks for everybody showing up. All right, I'm going to share my screen, and let me pull that information up. There are 16 slides. It may go a little bit longer. I'll move through this as quickly as I can. I would like to start off with a couple quotes. We've seen this. Fail to plan, plan to fail. The same thing in aviation, the same thing when we make a trip, the same thing in business. There are always plans, and I call it sort of the 80-20 rule. We spend a lot of time planning, but there's a reason that we plan. But by the same token, here's my next slide, and you might say, well, wait a second here. Yeah, no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy, or plans only good to the point of execution, as we say. So one must be willing to adapt very quickly and understand. I think a couple months back, a few months ago, in one of my sessions, we talked about the OODA loop by Colonel Boyd, the Air Force colonel. That talked about observing, orienting, and deciding and acting, and getting inside another person's decision matrix, so that you can work more quickly and have greater success, and have them kind of on the defense when you're on the offense. They're reacting to you instead of you reacting to them. That's the whole point of it. And the reason I just wanted to put this up here and put some background is this is just military leadership through the years, through the centuries. And surprisingly, while we've adapted because of weaponry and technologies and such, there are some things that stand the test of time in terms of tactics and strategies. albeit there are some things that have changed dramatically too because of technologies and the speed with which we can gain information, particularly and communicate. I think those are two big ones. So let's delve right into this. The 6 troop leading steps. I've always pronounced this BAMSIS. I've heard fellow Marines call it BAMKIS. Either way, it works. I've boldened the first part so you kind of have an idea where the emphasis is on the word itself. So BAMSIS, BAMSIS, BAMKIS. Okay. So here are the 6 troop leading steps, and I've italicsed number 5 because we're going to delve into that a little bit more. Because once we get through this first series of slides, yeah, you're going to get to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, hopefully I'm not creating a sleeping pill here for everybody, but you'll see why the planning process is so egregious sometimes. We have this sort of saying in the Marine Corps. We say, plan early, plan thrice. But planning without it, I'd say you're doomed to failure. But you've got to be able to react to the plan. If you don't do a plan, then really, where are you? Just shooting in the dark. So there's a point to doing planning. So let's just kick this off. The first step is begin the planning. And what happens initially is, as somebody walks down maybe to you in the corporate world, or your better half walks in and says, hey, take care of this, this is your receipt, this is our receipt of the mission. And the same thing happens here. So, the powers on high come down through the process. It starts at maybe the combatant commander level, and it goes then to the MEF level, the Marine Expeditionary Force, large scale. Then, and as it gets down smaller and smaller to the detail, down to the company and the platoon and the squad, what's going on is there's greater granularity that begins to unfold for all the little nitnoid things that kind of need to go on if one is to be able to look at an end state and what they envision as success in order to help the entire process. And anybody who's been in the corporate world, anybody who's working in this environment, understands there's a parallel in that universe as well. So during after the receipt of the mission, there's a warning order, and this warning order is a very abbreviated version. So the commander gets this information, goes to his supervisors and says, okay, this is what we're doing, this is where we're going, this is what we'll probably need, this is how we're going to get there. It's very abbreviated. There's no real detail, because he needs to let them, he's got to let them fly and let them get to their people so that they can begin their process of preparation. At least they're getting to that 80% solution, so to speak. When the detail comes down in the 5-paragraph order, they can make final assessments and changes as necessary. And just so everybody understands, this isn't something that just comes out of the dark. We train to this in a very big way, just as you do in the corporate world, This is well trained. We know what's going on. Somebody who works at Boeing, who works on, say, a wing, as opposed to the fuselage, we know the big picture. We're going to make this 757 or this 737. That's the end result, and it's going to go to this country is buying these many. But this is my section right here. I put the gas tanks in the wings, that kind of thing. So that's the level of detail we get down to, and we're just a cog in the wheel of the process. What I'm going to talk about today is the tactical thought process and analysis, because there's a lot that goes into this, and you're going to find out why we tend, at least in the American military, in my opinion, and special forces across the globe tend to have the kind of success they do, because they don't leave too many stones unturned, although they're also very adaptable. So still staying with step number 1, first thing we do is we estimate the situation, and you'll see these acronyms. I'll list them on top, and if you take MET-TC and you go down the list, you'll see that all these things, the mission analysis, enemy analysis, troop and fire support, terrain analysis, you'll see that those are the first letters, every one of those. And AMLCOA, If that's enemy's most likely course of action. What do we think that they are going to do? Well, in business, we could say the same thing. If you are Procter and Gamble and you're working with, Johnson and Johnson, who's putting what out, and what products are we competing against? At Toyota and Nissan and Chevrolet and so forth. We can see much in the corporate world and in the product world, the global world, the application much the same way. I know I'm just giving you the terms that we use there. I'm not attempting to create any aggravation here, but that amlicoa, enemy. Okay, you can put in whatever term you want there. You can translate this to however you wish to apply it to your situation or that your experiences. The estimate of the situation continuing, EXP, an exploitation plan. I'm not going to get into the detail of these. And this is what I was saying at the beginning of our session. If you want more detail and you'd like to talk to this at greater length, I'd love to. Because these can get really refined. We can get down to the nitnoid, and it gets painful. It can get very painful. That's the interesting thing about being a planner. And I'll just interject here, as a planner, I find it interesting that actually a good leader, a good commander, typically puts people in the plans division that have already had those experiences, have already lived out in that environment and done a lot of practical application. Why? Because they have all the nuances. They understand what's going on out there. They know ground truth. They know where the rubber meets the road. They know what's happening. So to put them in plans. But then what kind of happens to planners is they put this grandiose plan together, and they're married to the plan, and they love their plan. And they just think, oh my gosh, it's going to be great. And as soon as you step off the line of departure, things begin to change. And they are in this cycle of having the OODA loop and having to change their plan constantly, and it gets frustrating. That's why we don't have any hair, because we're pulling it out all the time as planners. The scheme of maneuver, how we approach a particular target or objective. Fire support plan, those would be like your artillery guys, your mortar guys, your aviation guys. What kind of support do we have, and what goes on in that to support our efforts forward to a particular objective? And then task development. What language do we use? Much like we use here, we have a standardized set of words that we use in particular industries that capture everybody's understanding. And they say, oh, I know what that acronym is. I know. We can have the same acronym that has 1,000 applications depending on where you're from. So it's having an understanding of that particular element or industry or category. So that's why we use standardized language, and everybody needs to learn this. So when these acronyms are used to help abbreviate the discussion, people understand what people are talking about. Mission, task, and purpose. That's just as it says. What are we doing? What are the tasks that people will be doing, and why are we doing it? Why are we sitting here today? Well, the reason we're sitting here today is I'm figuring that because 2021 is just kicking off, really what I'm wanting to do is talk about planning, because we're in that first month of 2021. Now, we can look back to December, and John was talking about this over a month ago. He's saying, I'm already working through, I'm not waiting till January 1st. We're looking into the new year. So planning actually was taking place before. But if you haven't really nailed it down and you're still kind of working on plans, which I am, we all will continue it. Planning is an ever ongoing circumstance. It is never ending, and plans are always going to change. So this is an ongoing process. You'll just understand in this first month. That's why I'm just bringing it now. I figured my first session coming out with JLSM, this would be an appropriate topic to discuss, to carry on for the rest of the year. And you can apply whatever you learn here however you wish. Enemy, the composition, disposition, and strengths. Now people go like composition, disposition. What's the difference between composition and disposition? Well, composition is just what they're made of. Their headquarters elements, their subordinate commands, and who they are. And you can look at salute. This is how, again, another acronym that we use. What is their size? What are they doing? Where are they located? What are the units? Who are the units? Do we know who they are? What time did it take place? Was this yesterday? Was this 2 hours ago? Was this 10 minutes ago that we got this information? Are we watching them real time? And what kind of equipment do they have? The disposition, how are they dispersed? Where are they placed? And what are the numbers within those organizations, and what kind of equipment and capabilities do they have? And again, capabilities, limitations. And if we get into as a ta-ta sort of situation with them, what do they do? What kind of things do we need to consider in terms of how they defend or how they are able to reinforce? What if they want to counterattack? What if they want to withdraw or delay? That's the acronym DRAW-D. Then there's terrain and weather that we take into consideration in our approach. Cover and concealment. Cover and concealment and any of these, and I want to interject this as well. Any of this that's being mentioned here applies to both sides. And much like I've had discussions, tactical discussions off and on with guys that I know even around this area, people talk about, oh yeah, we should take out a bridge here, or we should do this, or we should, watch. Anything that you do to the enemy could potentially have an effect on what is going on with you as well. So, for example, if you do decide that you want to interdict a bridge or an MSR, main supply route, that could remove your use of it as well. So you got to be kind of careful about how you decide what and where you want to use things and what you want to do to them. Troops and fire support available. Organic, the things that are given to us that are actually part of our unit. Attachments, who from another section or another unit is required to give us certain capabilities. Maybe our mission is not necessarily that of a particular squad or a platoon, that's organic to us. And because of the objective we're going after, we need some additional help in a particular area. So the commander above us can say, hey, you guys, you come over here and attach to these guys to help them do this because of this particular little nuance that we need some help with. And the same thing can happen with us helping somebody else. So that's what is meant by attachments and detachments. Fire support available. We talked about the higher and adjacent units. In all this analysis and all this process that's going on, the commander, the platoon commander, the company commander, the regimental commander, the division commander, the wing commander, the group commander, the squadron commander, these are all varying sized units. They are all going through this process and deciding how they want to approach things, and then at the end, at that 5-paragraph order, that's distributed out to the masses. So you can kind of see as this unfolds, there is some time that it takes to put these things together, and time is a rather interesting environment too, because time, you might say, oh, and by the way, we need to do this in 2 hours, and everybody's going, man, I've got 3,000 people to get this to. I need to get on this right now. So time can have a big effect on how much quality is in the intel, in the analysis. Or if you've got days and days or weeks or months to put this together, there's a lot more time. But by the same token, I think I heard this phrase this week, the paralysis of analysis. Got to be careful of that as well. Time, space, logistics. The 1/3, 2/3 rule. This I would say applies in the corporate world as well. The 1/3 rule is the commander and his or her direct supervision that they feel is required for certain things that they need to get out to their group of people. The 2/3 rule is for their supervisors. The point being that you don't want to take too much time away from somebody who needs more time to put things together. You shouldn't be sitting over there and just abusing the time that they need to put information and the tasks together and all the actions together to get things done that they need to take care of. So you don't need as much time, give them more time. Here are there are some other acronyms. Area of operations, you may have heard some of these. Tactical control measures. This is, okay, platoon, the first platoon is over here, second platoon is here, third platoon's over here. Oh, and we've got this company that is sitting here, and hey, third platoon and the third squad and third platoon, that last guy right there, you need to make sure you're linked up with the first guy of the first platoon of the next company of the next platoon over. So that, say you're walking down a series of ridge lines, and this is just a great simplification. You're walking down these ridge lines, and what you're doing is you have these units, and these two guys right here are linking up so that they are talking to each other or communicating or looking at each other. So there's a linkage in this linear effort. And these things can do this too. So there's a lot of action going on with this, and it's a matter of, that's a great simplification. We do a lot of that with communication now, and even satellite and things that are looking at us from above to help do this linkage. But there's a lot of ways to maintain that, and that's what is meant by these tactical control measures. Tactical control measures can also be time, in terms of, say you are approaching an objective and you're walking. Anybody who saw the Dirty Dozen, I use that. It's kind of funny because these guys literally go through an active artillery field that they're doing this exercise, and they, of course it's the movies, but they make it through and they make it look like they have this artillery barrage. But this sort of thing, you're doing this deconfliction, as we call it. So somebody's going to go through this area, but you want to make sure, you want to prepare the area, and maybe you want to put something in that area to kind of clean house, so to speak, so then somebody can go through a benign area and not feel like they have as much engagement that they might have to deal with. That's just another example. Fire support control measure, coordination measures, same sort of thing. Airspace control measures. So if you have aviation assets that are going to be used, how do you deconflict aviation? A lot of things flying around in the air. I have been involved in operations where planes have collided and killed people, and that's on them. And that's, the last person, anybody's in aviation here, Adrian, you would, I'm sure you would agree with this. The last and ultimate arbiter of flight is the pilot in command. So they get the last say. If something doesn't seem right, they get to move on. And then, of course, there are civil considerations. How quickly we're moving through an area. These are the potential for collateral damage for when we're moving in an area. And people who have done some reading in history know that actually, in some cases, many cases, entities, whole countries have actually used the populace as a methodology to get their foes to acquiesce by purposely going after the populace, the innocent populace. That is a tactic. It's a nasty tactic, and it's ugly, but it is something that has been used in the past. And to some degree, I suppose you could say that in some conflicts that we see today, it gets used in certain ways today. So the second step is arrange for reconnaissance. Now things are going to go a little more quickly. That is the analysis phase. So you can see there's a lot more that's kind of 80%. So these will kind of walk through pretty quickly. So you arrange for reconnaissance. Basically what you're doing is you're pulling your team together. You need some validation. You got this great plan. And you're saying, oh yeah, it's going to be, it's going to be perfect. Everything's, well, then the commander comes and says, well, how do you know? How do you know any of this is going to work? And I'm kind of playing devil's advocate, but seriously, how do we find out? We need some validation. We need something. We need some ground truth that can tell us what percentage of this might have it might be accurate, might be right on, or are all our planning prove to us that we are out in left field and we just made a huge faux pas and we have to go back to the drawing board and make some substantial changes. And that can happen and has happened as well. You'll see a number of acronyms down at the bottom: HUMINT, ELINT, SIGINT, GEOINT. If you don't know any of these, you can go look them up. But HUMINT, I'll just give an example, would be human intelligence. ELINT, electronic intelligence. TechInt, technology intelligence. SIGINT, signals intelligence. Geospatial intelligence, and so forth. Financial intelligence. So you can see that there are a number of different ways to gain information, and this kind of intel is not necessarily available to the guy who was in the fire team or in the squad or even in the platoon. And I'm talking about somebody who puts his hand on the intelligence officer and says, hey, can you help me here? Now they can go to a company level environment or go to a group or higher level and get that, or they may be in a situation where that is an asset that's being given to him because there's something particular that's going on that they really need some real-time liaison that has access to real-time information. So but that's not an everyday occurrence. Although the information is typically parsed down to the lowest levels possible that have the clearances necessary to be able to execute on that information. And I'm sure we see that in the corporate world. Not everybody has all the information on, again, looking at aviation. I may be somebody who works on the landing gear. Doesn't mean I need to have all the information on what goes on in all the black boxes in the cockpit. And I don't need to know that necessarily. And there may be things in certain parts of airplanes that and other even cars where you have privileged information, you have IP, intellectual property, and there are things that you just don't get to know at that level of detail. You take something in, you take something out, you put something in. You don't need to know how it works necessarily through and through, all the little nitnoids. Example, like painting radar on the ground. I need to put this radar in an airplane. I need to know that it functions, that it's panning, that it's all operational, but I don't need to necessarily know how all the algorithms that paint that image on the ground that turns it into something visual in the screen. So again, to be effective, you make reconnaissance. This is actually sending people out. This is the actual action. And the people that are making reconnaissance, this is typically people in either the SOF environment, or if it's not that necessary, these are people that can go out there into the hinterlands to find this information out to confirm it. It doesn't mean everybody is always going out there into some areas that could be where they could be compromised. Some of this information can be gleaned as well from intel sources. Then you complete the plan, and what I mentioned before, don't fall in love with the plan. We've heard that here as well. You just you want to pursue. You get too far. You fall too far in love with your products, or you think they're going to do work well, and then something isn't happening, and you're throwing your pen down. You're all upset. And it takes you completely out of the game emotionally, instead of maintaining some objectivity and handling the issues that are coming your way. The whole point of JLSM, I think we talked about this from the very start when I first came into this too. This has been the stabilizing force for us in in these huge peaks and valleys of the entrepreneurial environment. So step back and look objectively and find out what you must do to either improve or move on. You feed your stallions, right? And the things that aren't working so well, you get rid of them. And then you issue the order, and we'll get back to that. That'll be my next slides. And then the most important troop leading step for us is supervise. You watch your people. IVA, you've had some great sessions. I'm sure you get this very much, and anybody who works in the corporate environment understands this perfectly. Whether you have a very small business with just a few people, you still need to see that things are working. Are they doing as I had asked or as I had trained? Are they following the processes correctly? Are they making progress at the particular pace that I'm looking for? You don't want to end up there at the end and going like, wow, we still need to fix these 15 different things, and we're 10 minutes away from line of departure. And it's like, oh my gosh, then you're in this big, what we call a flail X. You're flailing around, a flailing exercise. So that's what we call a flail X. So you're in the flail X mode, and nobody wants to be in the flail X mode. Okay. So the 5-paragraph order, or what you call SMEAC, at situation, mission, execution, administration, logistics, and command and signal. I just went through all this information, and just like, how in the heck do you bring all that information to bear? How do you get that so that the layman who just, hey, look, I'm just a trigger puller. I just fix this airplane. I just do this. How do you bring it to people so they can understand it? So we're going to go through that. And it's not that the fire team leader, the squad leader, the platoon leader, they have their ways and their methods to bring that information, because that's the relationship we talk about. Glenn's mentioned this many times too, relationship building. It's all about the relationship, right? We get relationships. You must know your Marines. That's a tenet in our service. We need to know how these guys act. We need to know how they behave. If they're married, who their family is, where they live. Believe it or not, this is stuff that we really need to understand because there are nuances with people. We can look at somebody much like we look at each other here. And we go like, so and so is acting a little bit differently today. Something's going on. These are things that can have an effect when the the rubber meets the road and things are really serious. So it's important to have um, a real close, real intimate relationship on that front to understand the people. So and how that gets dispersed. And the only reason I'm saying that is because when you get to know your fire team, when you get to know your squad, and a fire team is like 4 people, a squad's 13 people, a platoon is about 42 people, you can see how the numbers grow. But when you get to know these people, you get to know how they act as a whole unit. And this helps you move that information or provide that information to them in a manner that you know that they will understand. So it's not a perfect science. You have all these, the 5 paragraph order, SMEAC. Everybody knows what that is, but how one disseminates the information in those paragraphs can be a little bit different from one leader to another, based on how they feel their people can receive and absorb and comprehend that information. So let's get into that situation. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time in this either. What I really wanted to do is you can see a number of the same acronyms and the same information that came in the analysis. So under situation, what is our situation? What's the situation with the enemy? What's our situation? What's going on with them? What's going on with us? And it can be very brief. It could be these guys are located on this hill 250 meters ahead of us and across a line that is 100 meters wide, and they have 3 squads that are at 80%. Maybe we have HUMIT, maybe we have some other kind of intel out there that tells us that we've been able to accumulate that shows us and analyze that says this is what's going on, and their strength is more to the right than to the left, so we're going to put more pressure on the right to try to move through that objective. That's sort of the process that's going on and how information is being given to people. And then we talk about, and then we know what's going on with ourselves. We know what we have for assets. We know how much ammunition we're taking. We know what kind of metal supplies we have, because these are things that we carry. We just went through this, John. You got the Molly gear, you've got the medical kit on, you've got your ammunition, you know how many rounds you have, all this kind of stuff. You carry all this additional equipment, and everybody is configured pretty much the same, maybe some small changes, but we want the standardization, but because we want everybody acting the same. And there's another reason for that, because if somebody goes down, somebody knows right where to go on their Molly gear to get what they need to get. If that person has been taken out of the fight, they can go right to get the additional information or ammunition, get that medical kit if they need to get to it, get right to it and get to work. It's all about efficiency. It's all about reducing how much time, because in those environments, literally nanoseconds, milliseconds count. So you can't be waiting around going like, well, what should we do next? That doesn't work. So there may be times where there are lulls in the action, so to speak. People need a break, and the sides have said, okay, let's take a break here, and things kind of die down, and everybody's going like, okay, what's going to happen next? But it doesn't mean your spidey senses aren't still up there, and you're still not trying to figure out what's going on. Attachment and detachments. Again, we talked about that. The civil part of this, the people that may be in and around us, if we're moving through urban environments where there are a lot of people, or basically cities or towns. Then the mission, the who, what, when, where, and why. And that's a very quick sentence. We, first platoon, has been told to take Hill 271. 250 meters ahead at 0400 tomorrow morning to take that objective and secure the oversight of this particular MSR, where our whole mission is going to be reconnaissance, and to just be able to call in and say, so many vehicles have moved here, troop movements. We're not to be able to say we're not going to engage them, or it might be we're setting up an ambush. we are going to engage them, but we need to take that hill first so we have look down advantage so we can see what's going on. That's just, and there are 100,000 scenarios. That's a whole different game. Then the execution, the commander's intent. What do I intend to do? This is what I want to have happen. Our center of gravity, vulnerabilities. Again, if you want to learn any of this extra stuff, this is basically our weaknesses and our strengths and what we're going to work to and what we're working against on the enemy, what we need to keep into consideration for them too. Concept of operations, the scheme maneuver, fire support plan, who's supporting us? Do we have artillery? Do we have mortars? Do we have a 50 cal with us, et cetera, et cetera. And then tasks. First platoon, you're going to do this. First squad, you're going to do this. This is where you're going to go. This is your area. This is your lane, so to speak. This is your area of coverage on this terrain. It is all spelled out, and people do this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of times until they know this. Just give me the gouge. Give me the information. I know what to do. To give it to me quick. This whole effort takes 10 minutes maybe. And it might take 2 minutes if it's that quick because you're in the middle of something and you're doing a very quick SMEAC, a quick 5 paragraph order. Or it can take 20 or 30 minutes if you want to be more detailed because you have time. We saw coordinating instructions, admin and logistics. Here's where Evelyn fits in. Anybody understands the logistics side of the house. We have this little saying that amateurs talk operations, professionals talk logistics. And anybody who's done done history, we all know, and even in our environment here, logistics is what keeps us going. The stuff that's coming to us for our next, for our next 250 units. Anybody who watched what happened between Patton and Rommel in North Africa knows when he started running out of gas, well, oops, that's a problem. Now my tanks don't move. Well, guess what? So what do you think people are trying to do? They're trying to get behind the lines. They're trying to interdict those logistics lines, the same in Vietnam, the Ho Chi Minh Trail, et cetera, et cetera. It's all about trying to eliminate or reduce the enemy's ability to have a logistics train to get the stuff that they need to get for themselves, whether it's medical supplies, whether it's beans, bullets, and bandages, as they say. Or batteries. We used to say bean bullets and band-aids, and now they've kind of changed it to batteries. All the things that you need, and you can see the stuff that's required. And then command and signal. How do people talk to each other? And this gets down even to challenge words. When you're getting on the radio, you want to make sure that has somebody been able to get into our hack our radio channel, our frequencies. So there's only 2 people that know these codes for these particular hours on this particular mission. So on that side, unless they've been compromised in a way that they've kind of let the cat out of the bag, you use these words initially in conversation so that somebody can go, yeah, okay, yeah, that's who, that's Captain so and so, or that's Lieutenant so and so, or that's Sergeant so and so, etc. That's how we kind of do that stuff. And if you really get into a bad situation, what's contingencies? Where do you go? How do you get there? What kind of smoke do you use? What color smoke? I mean, this gets really involved. And then command. And this is a very real thing too. And maybe on a lesser issue, but you never know. Ivier, I want to bring up the point where you were talking about the loss of some of the people who come in, and they've embezzled a company. And you don't know when that's going to happen. The leadership might. And maybe they decided who they're going to have put in their place when that person gets sent to the door and escorted to the door and say, see you later. One of those kind of things, but many people don't. So who's the next one in line? That can happen here too. But in a situation where all of a sudden that person's there, hey, guess who? What? Your turn. You get to step up and do it. You better have been listening. The same in sports. Anybody who watches any sports, somebody gets hurt in sports. Well, that's why there's in practice, you have second teams, you have third teams, you have the practice squad, because somebody needs to be able to move into that position just like that if something happens. So in closing, someone's sitting in the shade today because someone planted a tree a long time ago. That, planning is something that is short, medium, and long term. It's something that is ongoing. It happens all the time. We're doing planning today. You planned to be on this, to be on this session. You're planning to be on other sessions. We're planning to listen to John and others in other days. These are on our schedules, et cetera, et cetera. And in the long term, we're looking down the road. But to take action on those plans now is how we end up with those trees later on from saplings. And that is the end of my session. And anybody who wants to step out here, please feel free to do so. I don't see any hands yet, but if anybody wants to come on out. And again, I know this was a little bit lengthy. I didn't give a lot of time to talk, but if you've got any final comments, please jump in here. I did this on purpose so you can kind of see that side of the house and understand how involved that process is. And I suspect anybody who's done a business plan knows this too. Hey, Wayne. Well, look, all right, a fellow aviator. All right, come on out, Wayne.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
Good.
So,
You're breaking up a little bit, Wayne.
good. Yeah, great. Paramount. I know what everything was done. As a matter of fact, sometimes planning is sort of a longer term process in place. So, for instance, checklists where there's standardized procedures, and checklists apply to both normal and non-normal situations, right? Every time it's set well in advance, it's reassessed continually as equipment changes, as new information becomes available, as you were saying. Not as tactical necessarily as what you're talking about from a military point of view on a particular operation, but certainly there. And then, of course, as things happen, the ability to adapt, as you were saying. So, having checklists for things that don't occur, and also having backup plans. So if my destination is A, but something changes weather-wise or mechanically or from the health of a crew member or a passenger, then we're going to go to B or C. And sometimes those decisions are actually had to be made on the fly as well. But the plans are there. So maybe the decision as to where you're going to go is made in the moment, but the actual processes that you follow to, number one, make that decision, and number two, execute that decision, have already been practiced numerous times and planned well in advance. So that's pretty cool. The other piece is the sports piece, when you actually think of teams and their ability to adapt, because you never know what's going to happen on a sports field. So they do have their standard plans. They maybe plan a play, but when something changes, maybe it's an on-the-fly decision to move from, say, a zone defense to a man-on-man defense. For instance, in hockey, when there's a breakaway, then the trailing defenseman will do a line change and jump on the bench so you can get fresh members out on the ice and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think it's pretty interesting, the planning piece, but also the ability to execute and adapt to that plan. So, yeah, I really enjoyed everything you shared there, Mark. Thanks.
Thanks, Wayne. And that's right. It's once, like I say, that once a plan is at the point of execution, all bets are off, and you got to be able to adapt very quickly. And that would be, I think, see that as a great subject matter too. How do we adapt? How do we go about that process? Thanks for sharing, Wayne. Hey, Julia, come on out. I see your hand up as well.
I have nothing too intelligent to say, but I do want to thank you for this peek behind the curtain. I had no clue how you guys prepare for everything, and how you even talk the talk. It's really interesting, but I just wanted to thank you, Mark.
Right. Thank you, Julia. And the one thing, just so people understand just how detailed this gets. I once had a conversation with when I was at Camp Lemonade, which is in Djibouti, in the Horn of Africa, back in 2003, with because we were doing some stuff with the special operations guys, the SEALs, and once had a conversation. And some in the preparation, these guys were even to the detail. Well, will the handle turn this way or will it turn this way when I open the door? Is the handle a circled, just a knob handle, or is it one with a flap? Will that flap be seen on the other side as movement if somebody is on the other side of that door or not? These guys get down to and they have to memorize and know all this stuff as it is just I mean, they don't even think about it. It's just muscle memory in every way. It's really amazing the kind of stuff that they get into at the level of detail. And to your point, Wayne, branch plans is what we call them. Ways to, other things that we do to, in case this doesn't happen, just so we have a direction. Doesn't mean it's going to go that way, but you have something that's, oh, this is in the back of, this is in the back, back pocket. Oh, okay, so this happened. I think we had a little session here months ago too on what we call decision points, right? So you get the decision points. Well, this is what's going on, so this means that this is what we need to do. That's the level of detail we get to. Hey, Giovanna, come on out. Thank you for sharing.
Hi, thanks, Mark. I used to teach writing, and when you say don't fall in love with your plan, I can totally relate to that. I would always tell my students not to fall in love with their writing, and I have a knack for falling in love with my writing. And it means that it's like the smartest students don't always produce the best papers because they're not flexible or willing to rewrite. I don't know how that relates to all this, but I'm sure it does. So yeah, I wanted to say that. I don't fall in love with your plan is a lot. Like I would say your first draft is just your warm up. So like you said, you're always going to have to make changes. Just get used to that idea and be adaptable. So I really like that thing.
Giovanna, that is an excellent point, and to follow on that, actually, you're right in the ballpark on that. I've been in what we call G5 or C5 in the plans environment. That's a section of people. You have G1, G2, G3, and each one means a little something. And at the plans level, I've been in a room with 30 other company and field grade officers with with this 8-foot white sheet that's on that we've just tactically with nails stuck up on it, and then somebody is projecting a plan, and they are literally wordsmithing every single line of this 50-page document. It is painful, but words have meanings, right? So the words that you use may have a different, and the reason so many people are involved in that is so that everybody is watching. And there may be people that are going, why am I even here? Well, it's because that way, what did I talk about? The standardization of verbiage. So when we walk out of that, everybody has watched this painful evolution. They've seen these words and they know, and these changes. Why did we make a change? Happy to glad, or whatever the word is. There's a reason for that. And you, being a teacher in those kind of skills, I'm sure you have a great appreciation for why words matter. So much so. So thank you. That's a great comment, Giovanni. You're right up the alley there. Stuart, come on out there, Professor.
Hey, buddy, you're the professor today. Great job. Obviously, a lot of time, energy, knowledge, and experience went into your presentation today. So thank you for that. Yeah, it smacked me in the face today. Best time to plant a tree 30 years ago. Second best time right now, right? I think about all these, just all these flooding thoughts come to my mind. The 7 Ps of planning, right? And there's different iterations of that, right? But proper prior planning or proper preparation and planning prevents piss poor performance, right?
Exactly.
There's a whole bunch of things about planning there. As an outfitter, as a guide, in my experience, and I'm sure you can relate in terms of military campaigns, the importance of big picture analysis, multiple contingencies, so that you have the ability to change course in an already sort of predetermined or an already pre-thought plan, right? So you got your main plan, but then you know, in the back of your head or on paper, you got a zillion other options in case things need to change course. I'm fascinated, honestly, man, by this concept of chain of command and essentially this interpersonal decision-making process, right? That starts with a general or a higher rank officer, creates the order. Then those orders get passed down through subordinates. It gets put on paper, right? You're talking about warning orders and missions and all these things. And eventually it gets to somebody who is going to act upon those orders, or groups of people that are going to act upon those orders, right? And that's fascinating to me in terms of just the I don't want to say mental logistics, but that conceptual logistics of how do you convey thoughts and information across continents, barriers and all these things, to where one person or a small group of people make a decision, and then somewhere far away, whether it's geographically or just administratively, let's say, enact or execute those orders. To me, it's almost this micro macro. I mean, I see this, in a military concept or context. I see it in a corporate context, right? As you alluded to. But to me, I see this like, okay, this is an interpersonal decision-making process from one person to another until finally those thoughts, right, are enacted upon. I'm interested in looking at how we can apply that on an intra-personal level, meaning that model of chain of command. What's the analogy that goes on in our own brains, in our own decision-making process, right? Where's the general in our brain that makes the decision, and then all that information travels around through the universe of our mind, right? Until we finally enact on those orders to get stuff done, right? So, that's fascinating to me. And then the other thing, you were talking about acronyms, man. And I appreciate this concept of communication, efficient communication. How do you save time? Because time, when you're dealing with, whether it's military or corporate, right? It's all about what's the time from the time that thought is created, that order is given, to the time it's actually executed. As a guide, as a wilderness first responder, I know we have other first responders on call as well, right? And so the level of training that I have also includes how to talk to dispatch, how to make a call on the radio and convey important information about a patient, about somebody whose life may be in danger, and could very well be saved by seconds or minutes, in terms of how you communicate that information. In wilderness medicine, we have all these acronyms. There's the SOAP note, which is how we assess a patient and how we communicate that information to dispatch, so that information can then go to paramedics and doctors and things like that. Because if you have to communicate all that information from the beginning, right, you might lose somebody. But if you can save time by how you communicate to the people that are going to care for those people, that's a valuable skill. Even in search and rescue, things like that, there's this whole military chain of command. It's pretty fascinating to me. And then what else did I want to say? You were talking about the enemy, right? And I think on the one hand, I could see that you were, a little like hesitant to put that out there, like that it was a war term or whatever. But we all know in mindset who the enemy is, right? So it's almost this macrocosm, microcosm kind of thing, right? So to me, the enemy is fear, indecision, inaction. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
What gets in you, negative thoughts, negative self-talk, right? That's the enemy to me. So I appreciate all that stuff. And what I love about what you share is that, it comes from a certain context, but it's totally applicable to everything that we're doing, right? In mindset and business and success. So cheers to you, man. Hats up.
Thank you, Stuart. I would say, just one word probably encapsulates that for us, for the military, in terms of communication and how things move through the chain of command, so to speak, and that is culture. From the very start, even in the corporate world, or when Giovanni's a teacher, or Ivier works in the corporate world. When you walk in the door of someplace, there's kind of a set of standards. There's a set of there's a way that people talk. There's an expectation of how people act. What are the rules, the guiding principles, et cetera, et cetera. We do that in our business. Same thing here. They go to boot camp. Everybody gets on the same page. Everybody's a rifleman first. And that's how it's all learned. So when things begin to get in, now there are nuances as you move up the chain. That second word is called trust, and as you move up the chain, trust is developed, and that's who gets to move into those sorts of positions, because now they know that that information that is disseminated will be disseminated with the same intent as it was delivered to that person. So there's little lost in the communication as it moves down to the final arbiter that executes the action, so to speak. Anyway, and then one last thing, and I got Cyril on the horn here, and I'll bring him out here in a second. But if anybody doesn't know, I'm sure Wayne and Adrian understand this. In aviation, aviators are given call signs. We call them call signs. And we giggle and we laugh about it. Sometimes you get a call sign because of something cool you did. But most of the time you get a call sign because of something bad you did, or something that is meant to test your character. So you did something that was embarrassing. So that's the call sign. And you may get a call sign that lasts for your entire career. And your call sign precedes you. But call signs have a tactical implementation aspect to them too. When people are in the air and they're dogfighting, they're fighting each other, and a communication line has been hacked, and people are listening, they don't know who's talking to who, because they're using call signs. They're not using Captain so-and-so or Major so-and-so or, Lieutenant Colonel so-and-so or Lieutenant so-and-so. They're using call signs, and they don't necessarily know whose call sign is who. So people can use call signs, whatever that call sign might be, XXX do this, XXX do this, turn this way, turn that way. So it's a way for people to communicate without actually being completely compromised, if they are compromised in their communication channels. Just food for, just in case people are wondering. Hey, Cyril, your turn.
Hi, great one, Mark. I really enjoyed that. For me, it was a parallel to, because I studied marketing and business, and it relates quite interestingly to writing business plans and marketing plans, because they have similar dualities. Although I mean, obviously there was loads of stuff I didn't understand in great detail, but even in terms of the parts of the plan, in terms of action plan, what do you do, your risk assessment, your operations, your mission in terms of putting the plan into operation and so on. Yeah, there are really interesting parallels, and I wouldn't be too surprised if some of the planning from business and marketing is actually taken from military planning, because of the parallels seem quite so similar. And obviously a lot of it is is logistically the same as well. So really interesting. I'd love to have a closer look at that at some point. Great one. Well done, Mark.
Thank you, Cheryl. We've got about a minute and a half left or so. I typically like to leave a small portion to end things out. So if our magnet is here and he wants to jump out here for 60 seconds or so, and finish us up, John, if you want to, come on out and say what you want, and then I'll close things up. If he's still here, is he still here? And if he's left, then I will close things up. Anybody else? I guess we are done. He may be hosting another session, so he may have already had to jump off. All right, folks. Hey, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. If anybody wants to talk further about any of this stuff, hit me up. You know where I live, so we can connect. If there are offshoots of this information you'd like me to tackle for future sessions, more than willing to do that too. And I do have, just so you're aware, I do have a couple of names in the works for doing some interviews. I've already talked to several of my fellow kinsmen in the Marine Corps who have some interest in doing that, and we just need to coordinate that. So that's forthcoming, and I think that'd be great. It'd be just a Q&A. You can ask your questions, you can talk to people who are bona fide, have been in that environment, been there, done that, and get the horse's mouth sort of approach to that side of the house, in case you've ever had questions about it. Okay, everybody have a great day. Thank you very much.
Hey,
Happy
Mark.
New Year.
Thank you,
Hey,
Mark.
Mark, just
Yeah.
a reminder, Nancy's session today at 3 p.m.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that,
Thank
Evelyn.
you.
And
All right.
Shannon, I believe at 8 p.m. tonight.
Yes, she has the branding session. Yes, that's at Eastern
Yes.
time. Okay,
Yes.
thank you, everyone. Thanks for stepping out, Evelyn, for that. Okay, 10 o'clock. Gotta go.
Thanks.
See you
Mark.
guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.